like to think of it's the most organic or true way to see things. It's like you guys are vibing off the same frequency. That going back to the music thing, sound waves.
Yeah.
A lot of people understand sound waves now because you could literally you could see a sound wave like, you know, the pulse, right? My household is a harmony, is a frequency.
Yeah.
That's the best way I can transcribe all that and just say
it's a chord, a musical chord.
Yes.
I had a heart attack at 38 years old. It was very unexpected. It was what they call the widowmaker. The main artery that provides 60% of the heart's function was completely blocked for me. So it was shut entirely. There's good calluses and there's bad calluses. Sometimes we callous ourselves to, like you said, you know, the last straw. Even with sobriety and other things like that, people hit rock bottom. I wonder what life would be like if we didn't wait till we hit rock bottom to make changes, you know?
Yeah. The whole faith is at home. That could be anything. Whatever you believe or don't believe, I wish that was kept at home. I have friends that are atheists, Buddhists, Muslim, and we all intervene. Jewish friends of mine, that's never a source of small talk. Political view?
Yeah.
And what's your religious view?
I hate politics.
Keep that at home, dude. Keep it at home. Your politics are at home and your faith is at home. Keep it there.
Take risks. The risks that you may think that you never thought you can do, you can try. And the trying part is in itself an accomplishment. Remind yourself to not get stressed over the little things.
But here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are, man. What's motivating you? Right?
It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
If I go through the files in my brain and I think about what motivates me to do anything, I think it's right now what's motivating me here is honestly, man, I can use a hang session. I could use maybe like a talking through therapeutic kind of vibe, you know?
Yeah.
I enjoy having conversations with people and I enjoy hearing people's stories, but I also enjoy, you know, being able to like share mine and express mine.
Because you have a story.
I do, man.
And you're here, you're present, you're living, and it almost wasn't. That wasn't the case, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So give us a little intro. Who are you? Because you have your own podcast.
I do. I'm a hometown boy. I was born in Madera, California. I lived there maybe till my first, few months of life or whatever.
Sure.
But I grew up in a small town called Biola, west of Fresno. It's right in the cuts,
Yeah.
In that country life, I grew up in a very poor family. Growing up, there's 4 of us kids, 2 parents. My mom stayed at home. Mm-hmm. My dad worked 3 or 4 jobs just to kind of, make sure that we were well taken care of. Up until the age of 11, we lived in a small one bedroom shack. It was just a little small house. And, we struggled, of course. But it was an interesting way to see like kind of my parents who were young parents growing up and them growing up before our very eyes, pretty much, being in their young 20s. I couldn't imagine how I was, my dad was 24 when he had all 4 of us. And I remember when I was 24, how I was not ready to be a parent and not ready to do any of those things too. I bounced around a little bit, in college and trying to figure myself out in my early 20s. I moved to Phoenix, then I moved to San Jose, then Sacramento, and then back to Fresno. I actually didn't have any intentions to stay in the Central Valley. As anybody that lives in the Central Valley, I'm sure you've probably gone through this, is that we all hit a point where we're like, I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm a big fish in a little pond.
What year did you graduate?
I graduated high school in 2003, so 2003.
Okay, cool. So then 2003, and you said you have 4, it was 4 of you guys, right? 3 other siblings?
Yeah.
You guys grew up in that shack, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, man, because I feel like I was such a kid that I can remember looking down from the front door to the back door, and it was just this endless hall, For me, it was like this huge place. And my parents, they literally slept they set up a bed in the laundry room, and all 4 of us kids slept in the bedroom that was there, If you go back and drive there, you're like, there was a house there? Because it's like a little sliver of a spot that has a side yard, I
grew up in the same situation, kind of. My grandparents kind of raised me, and it was the same thing. Like, it was on land, and it was, I don't know, it was like a 2-bedroom. But it was like literally like a typical square box house, but it wasn't big. It just like one big L or, like a right angle of a house. But as soon as they moved out, man, they've demolished it and they kept cropping. What's the name of your podcast?
It's called the Mendsroom, MEND. Overall synopsis of it stemmed from me having conversations with friends, but it's basically a lighthearted podcast where we just have some interesting conversations.
When did you start that?
So I started it September of last year. I had a big break for an unexpected thing that happened in my life. That
we gotta get into that too. We'll talk about it for sure. It's clever. It works. Your last name is
Mendoza too. So it's the first part of my last name too. So MEND, and then also the word mending is that's the idea is that hopefully we come to a place of mending. You
really sell it with the sign though. It takes your mind directly to okay, like the men's room.
Yeah. And the logo is like a little, the little guy that he rocks a mustache like me, and then he's a little wider than the typical men's sign.
That has to be a real personalized, like the logo for this is just Flash that I drew up. And I was like, I'm gonna make it happen.
I mean, I used I'm not an artist, a graphic artist at any point. So,
but you're a musician, so that counts. Yeah. That's art, and what you do with this mending and this quest that you've been on with. When you started the project, that's an art, because there's a lot of people I've spoken to have painted many pictures for me that I'm like, I've never thought of this, or I've never seen it this way, or things that I haven't seen that perspective.
I'm all about creativity, man. I love speaking with creatives. I've had some storytellers and videographers and other creatives in different spaces. And I love just the collaboration. I think that there's tremendous value in talking about the different levels of creativity. Your interview or your episode with Louis Lou on that, he's a creative in a different lane as well too. But I love when collaborations like that happen.
And he has no tattoos.
Yeah,
I was going to ask you if you had. I clearly saw one. Yeah, what tattoos do you have?
I have 1, 2, 3 total tattoos.
You were raised Catholic, Christian?
I was raised Christian, and I went through a journey of deconstruction. My idea of faith has kind of shifted, in so many different ways. Even my concept of God is not what it used to be, and so now I have more. I really I have a affinity and a really appreciation for spirituality. I didn't always, I kind of grew up in more traditional settings and whatnot too, but to be open to more, self-identity, self-actualization and things like that. I think that God is represented in so many different ways. And so the spiritual aspect of my life has been kind of shaped by my Christian upbringing, my point of agnosticism and atheism when I stopped believing in a traditional sense of God, through a journey of spirituality. So back to,
you'd consider it for sure you labeled yourself atheist, or
no? So
or it's just that's what you would.
Yeah, I mean, I protest it. Sure. At some point, I'm I don't believe in God anymore. But
what drove you to that, if you don't mind me asking?
A lot of honestly, a lot of scars from having been exposed to people. People in positions at churches and whatnot too, which is a big reason why a lot of people in the first place are unreligious in that way, because they're I'm not going to go to a church where I know that that the Catholic Church has a stigma of the priests being
all the stuff that follows
kid diddlers or whatever. So but the reality of is the truth of the matter is, as humans we are all we're all imperfect. And so the sooner I came to the realization of that, I'm not going to this church to worship this man up that's on the pulpit. I'm coming for a personalized relationship with God, and all this guy is doing is helping me guide to to different things. And so that was the switch that happened to me.
Another client referenced that as a beacon.
Yeah,
exactly. So that was interesting, because we were talking about teachers. Mm-hmm. How, and ourselves as parents, how we have to be that beacon.
Yeah.
That's the lost ship at sea kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
There's a lot of illustrations and literature out there that talks about a lot of things where we can almost run our parallel to our lives. To step aside from that and just say, I deal with all walks of life, right? I'm just today was a heavy day. So And it's funny because
Let's talk it out, man. Let's talk
yeah. You know what I mean though? Like that's one of those things that it's like it's a heavy day, and then I got my days that with our clients, we're like their therapists, but then they also hear sometimes our input, which then goes into a story like this. If I'm tattooing you now, it's like, well, guess what? This is how my day started. If I care to share, right? Another fellow artist of mine that another homie, he was like a tattoo artist that was around the time that I was coming up. He's like, man, some clients, they dump on us, man. They like tell us their stuff. I was like, hey, man, that's cool, but I don't want to have to carry this to my, to our house. And then I had this client who she'll also be on this next, like another episode. And we're talking about how teachers, they actually play a big role in our children's paths or lives. And they're like, yeah, it's like the beacon. And then we start talking about this beacon and we compared it to like ourselves as parents, right? I know people out in the streets that fell off. Okay. And we have our own way, not as severe, but we do have our way that we fall off. It could be fall off, like they say, you fall off the rocker, you fall off your horse. When we go to bed, sometimes we're expecting that, all right, how many times have we looked at the time? 11:45 or 12 or whatever, or 10, whatever you're privileged to go to sleep with kids or with not.
For me, it's 9:30. I'm like, whew.
Yeah. So, and I bet you're thinking like, okay, I got to get up at 7 or 6. That gives me this many hours. Like, and then something might happen that disrupts your sleep. And guess what? Now it's shortened it up. You get from the shorter end of sleep into, you thought you were going to get your 7 hours down to 5, and then you're like, now I can't go to sleep. I'm going to set 3 hours. I went to sleep. I started right and it ended wrong. You don't allow that to set the pace for the next day as soon as you wake up. I've been doing so many things different, and just by the little tweaks of different steps or different how we have a routine. I don't like routine. And this isn't why I did this. If I do something like tomorrow morning is going to be, every morning you kind of have to, that's like the whole analogy of roll with the punches.
Yeah.
So this morning I roll with the punches, whatever gets thrown at me. There's title of the house. I hear that a lot with like, I'm the man of the house, but I feel like, well, it should be a team thing, right? And it's like, it should be everybody's not pulling their own weight, but I'm also hearing other stories of other people's households or whatever. And in my household though, we're trying to like, it's like being that solid, everyone, all hands on deck kind of thing, right? Even the children, like let's all, you know what I'm saying? If you're like, hey, it's the tribe, the village, right? But I come here and then I'm faced with another thing. And it's like a client story. It's the challenge that we can't let this tattooing, man, I'm permanently damaging people's skin. If I were to,
when you put it like
in another term, right? I have this artist that I looked up to, and I would watch his videos of like back in the day when there used to be like tutorial videos, because we didn't have the whole social media. You would have to get a physical DVD to watch this guy. He was going to teach you about doing portraits or whatever. And he would say, when I do portraits, if it's going to be hyper realism, you have to do it like the picture. However you do an eyeball or your nose, delete that. You have to do it like the picture, and there's a lot of things that stuck. When it's time to turn this switch on and off, you have to know how to do that. When it's time to come in here, you turn that switch on. It's, that's why, another reason why I like to do the whole appointment only. I can tell you what I'm doing the rest of my month. Yeah. I'm prepared. I guess being prepared. We don't like to be, I know you could probably relate to this. We don't like to be blindsided.
That's the basis for anxiety and stress in the first place, is the lack of control of something. Yeah. And I struggle with that. Biggest thing for me is when I'm not in control of the situation, that's when I feel most anxious. That's when I feel most stressed. And you're right. If you have that at your disposal, to at least know your work schedule, then that's within your control. You can't do this sleep. You can't be 100%. Yeah. You can't account for the activities of a kid, because my kids will at any given point just like decide to like just throw up all over the place. And
those nights happen.
They happen.
They happen, and again, we take charge, we hold reins, and we just, let's go, cowboy. But I feel like I come in here and it's time to turn that switch on and take on what I have to tattoo today. I went from a neck tattoo to a memorial piece. Like, it's pretty hard to put this kind of, and so a neck tattoo that was a very hard, like bold traditional tattoo on the neck, difficult area. It's a cover up. So I have to apply myself to that, because I'm not going to do that to a client and be dishonest to be like, not really, I don't really have the energy today, but I'm still going to show up. I'm not going to let the money does not drive me, is what I'm trying to say. The money doesn't drive me. I was curious your motivation. There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because it's nice to know what people, we can just stop here and be like, let our lives just flash us by and just be like, what motivates me? Well, motivates me is stepping through the front door after my day.
Yeah.
Right? To leave and just to accomplish and come back. That's my motivation every day. People don't really see it that way.
Yeah.
And then, so me, I'm not money motivated, because then I would be doing dishonest job.
Yeah.
And
you can crank out more volume. If you're in for the money, you just, like, I'm only going to do small pieces, I'll see 100 people in a day, whatever it was,
Yeah, it was once like that, doing the walk-ins, and so I lived in Gilroy, tattooing in Gilroy, walk-in shop. I've worked up my apprenticeship, walk-in shops, street shops, and everything's getting tossed at your door. You have to know how to switch on the tribal switch to the butterfly switch to the next, smile now, cry later, and the live, laugh, love. And with everything going on in your life, no matter how hard it starts, you have to know how to turn that off, turn this on, turn this off, turn that on. And you know what I'm saying? So it's pretty wild, man. And being the parent, waking up, like for instance, last night, let's say it was one of those moments, 2, 3 in the morning, they're throwing up all over the place. You're like, oh no. And this continues until 5. Yeah. And then whatever you do, if you have to clock in at, some bosses, man, are pretty. I spoke to some people that they're very like, yeah, my boss is cool, they understand. Or some people are like, we don't care about your problem. Like, there's still a lot of jobs that needs to be done. Yeah. Like a lot of clients that want to get everybody, dude. I'm so grateful for everybody that I've worked with, that I've collaborated with, as far as the clients or whatever I've done, because they're so not only understanding, but they know we're all,
we're all people, and we all have lives and everything too. I think that maybe COVID broke down some of the walls or the stigmas behind that, because the realities of people just like, being unaware of their surroundings or what their demands are. Right. I think, like, now I'm the problem. I'm the one that's the issue in this situation.
And we don't realize that.
Yeah. And so maybe it was COVID or something that broke that down, and now people just seem to be a little bit more of like, you're right. Life's too short. Yeah. And I hate social media. I loathe it. I don't like, if you're up to me, I go back and forth with deleting my Instagram, or just removing it from my phone, because I don't want to be on it, at any point. I also feel like I'm not really good at like social media marketing and all this stuff.
Yeah, it's hard.
But with that, there's a tremendous amount of benefits to that. Like, you and I, we connected, on social media.
Yeah, I forget that social media is now almost like the next search engine.
It is.
If you're using it for the right reason, if I want to pull something up as far as like a service, if I need contractor, builders, some people are now using that as promotional, which is smart because they see the change of the times. The scary part is when we go into the whole social media in the wrong hands. It's a powerful tool, and especially you hear all the crime stories and all this stuff. Dude, now I'm like hooked on these people come in, they're like, they put on the crime or court TV. I never care. Not that I didn't even care about it, but now I'm listening to it and I'm just like, there's ads. We're like, it's this legit dude that's like, he's talking about these stories. He's even like, I want to say he's an attorney, but then all of a sudden, because it's a sponsor of the show, he'll stop and be like, do you want to find out information on it? I'm just like, what?
Weren't you just warning us of these kind of people?
That's the stock tool. I was like, oh man, that's insane. Wrong hands and wrong intentions. But do you remember when Angie's List was a thing?
Yeah.
You'd have to get on there to find your plumber, find your this, find the, and then there's also like Craigslist jobs.
It was even, I mean, yeah, Craigslist was before that. The phone book was even before that, you know,
The
like
phone. All right, let's take us back. The phone book,
yeah.
and then the
411.
The 411. Yeah. Hey,
Did you ever call that?
Oh yeah, dude. I one time called it just to see the pizza number of the like one of the local joints or whatever. Just imagine like back in the day, like that, plug in, like the whole redirecting and all that. Yeah, the switchboard, dude. And I was
with AI around, you know, so we're getting to a point that like the targeted ads, like you know, I can literally, if I go to Amazon right now and I start looking up something, I'm gonna get those ads on my Instagram.
Yeah. You talking here, being at a tattoo shop, you might get tattoo stuff now on your algorithm, and that's just how it works. But
Industry inks have been around for a while, and recently they expanded their pigment range. Everything from your primary colors, opaque grays, brand new anime skin tone, bright neon fluorescent tones, gray wash set, and black lining ink. If you haven't yet tried out this high quality pigment, head on over to industryinks.com. And with your order, you can take advantage of a special promo code using OUTLOUD for an exclusive discount. Try out their new range for yourself, and thanks again for the partnered sponsorship.
You know, it is what it is. I get it. And there's ways to strategically change your algorithm or what you're searching.
Right.
And a lot of it is starting all over, delete your Instagram, start a new one, and only search what you are into now.
I wanted to go back to your one of your previous points about talking about you know, the turning off and on the switches of our the dynamics of our lives. You know, I'm hearing some of the ways that you kind of interact within your family and things like that too, and it's not unlike mine. You know, my wife and I, we both work full time as well. So
what do you guys do? I didn't even ask you. What do you do?
Yeah, so my day job is I'm the boss actually for a lighting manufacturer company. We make high end light fixtures for commercial and, you know, different projects and things like that. And so I manage a team there. And my wife is a nurse, so she.
Okay. How long have you been doing that?
I'm very new in this role.
How did you get? Okay.
My background is in tech, so I worked in software for the past 12 years. And so this is the first role in manufacturing that I did. It was a good opportunity for me to move into a leadership position that I was leading a bigger team and things like that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used it as an opportunity. I also wanted to kind of I went through a bit of a phase, so it really tied into you know, the timeline of my life that, you know, I went through some health issues last year. That kind of put me in a perspective. So I was working fully remote at home. I felt like I needed a little bit more human interaction.
Yeah.
And I felt like the effectiveness of like being in face to face with people was losing its a little bit allure. It's come with its due challenges, because now I'm going into an office every single day. And, you know, versus like me, like literally just rolling out of bed. And so my wife's a nurse. She works full time too, you know, great. She's really great at what she's doing. She's rocking her career and things like that too. But, you know, we've got two young boys, 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And they're at the time of their lives where they crave our attention, you know?
Yeah.
And so the balance of life, you know, thankfully we have one of the other reasons why I really value having moved back to Fresno at the time too, is that, you know, I'm with my family, you know, and so my mom and her mom, they help with childcare, and so that's really helpful for the dynamics of our family. But we also we have this sort of modern, sort of maybe not traditional role of that, because we're equal contributors as parents. You know, even especially for me, having worked from home before, I was a work from home dad, not a stay at home dad. Because I was a primary parent in a lot of ways. I was the first one they called. I was the one that took them to their appointments and things like that. My wife's really good at what she's doing, and, you know, it also she's a equal financial contributor to the family too. So it's not like, you know, I can say like, well, you know, like she's working a little pet project or whatever. She's a career. She's a career. You know,
when you get into using words like contribute, and family, and like, it's hard because we were raised in a time where, I mean, my parents weren't like this, but before that, you know, was that machismo was hardcore.
Yeah.
And the traditions were, you know, they were strike traditions for a reason. Our traditions and getting a first tattoo and how that went, like, you know, there's a lot of, I'm sure, of the strike.
I heard your story about, you know, the experiences. I had the similar thing. You know, mine was on my back, and so I had to hide it. I was successful in hiding. I hid it for probably about a year before I got caught up, you know. But the same thing. I didn't even intend for it to happen, but I was wearing like a tank top, but just a little bit lower cut in the back. Yeah, and then my dad's like, my dad has tattoos, but his are like gang related tattoos, you know. And so that was the thing for him, is that like, I don't want you guys to have tattoos because this is represents a bad thing, you know.
Right.
And it's either you were locked up and you have tattoos as a result, or you're gang affiliated. And so for him, he was always like, and so he was like very, very disappointed. I was like, no, Dad, and so they realized like, oh, it's not a like similar to you're saying, like they didn't have a MF13 or anything on there, so it's like so they were more accepting at a certain point,
Yeah, I know. I have clients too that they work from home and they have literally like a tough shed in the backyard.
Yeah,
with like nice AC insulated and everything, but they are also like they take care of a lot of things that when we put in perspective, it's like the stay home work dad.
Yeah.
But it's a teamwork thing. It's a team effort. That's why it's hard to use like equal contribution, which I get it. That's what it is.
The traditional route for a lot of us, especially me, like I'm layered that way. I run in a lot of Christian circles still, where it's like that's very traditional. Stay at home mom and dad goes out and provides. And then the Mexican element of it too is that that was the same thing. Dad works very hard, and that's the dynamic for my parents too. My mom didn't work until we were like grown, or at least old enough to take care of ourselves and stuff.
Get into the school system and then
exactly.
The school's the babysitter.
Yeah, the school
that's what it was.
For real.
That's why I say like those teachers, man, they do play a big role, especially nowadays. I mean, they always did, but now let me ask you this: your opinion, the way things are going with economy, don't you think it's hard for a lot of people to have a stay-home mom?
That's the other.
Where now the man is kind of getting frustrated, or vice versa. If it's the woman that's the stay-home or whatever, you have one person that's working. I guess is what I'm trying to say. So one sole income, right? Families that have one sole income, it's very hard nowadays with this economy to just live like that now. Where it's like, you have one person that's the provider. And the way things are going, man, that provider is getting like, I hear it, frustrated and cooped up. Because someone could feel that way. Someone could feel like, man, I have all the weight. And then guess what? Now that fuse is starting to overload and overwork itself. And then little by little, man, I told him, I was like, what's hard is that you're probably walking around with all this. I was like, it's stressful and aggression. And it sucks because this guy's got 2 jobs, 3 jobs, whatever, or woman, whatever, again. And I'm just saying like that sole provider has 1 or 2 jobs to sustain a family with an economy that's only going up and up and up. And it's just like, is that even, I know it is. It also depends on what you're doing, but a lot of families don't have it like it once was. You're starting to see a lot of partners have to step it up, and then they find the issues, and then they find the stress, and then they find man, it's tough, man. That's why I think there's a lot of elements of the way some people are living that others don't see that side, and
which is
hard.
It's crazy because I mean that's you're absolutely right though. The single income is becoming less and less, especially with the economy. It's almost like we have to be dual income household. But when you do have that role, that dynamic of that, the stay-at-home parent and the income-earning parent, they look at each other with such like there's a miscommunication because let's say it's a husband that is out working very tough to be the provider. The wife longs to be out of the house and doing that, while the husband's like, you have it so easy. You're just at home watching the kids, and they both think that what they're doing is equally more important than the other. And so they come home with the frustrations of like when the other parent comes home, it's like, I need a time, I need moments myself. You've been, at this, and then it's the other one's like, well, I can't, I'm tired. I'm exhausted from having worked all day. And then, so the dynamic of that is, it can be challenging in such a way, but now imagine the need for 2 people to be in that same situation where it's like, I'm so stressed out from home, from working, and now that I'm home, I just want to relax. It's like, well, me too. I'm just getting home or whatever it is. And then, or if it's the opposite where it's like I'm working the night shift and working the day shift, you never get the commonality of that.
Since this year started, the very first week of consultations and tattoos that I did.
Have you heard people talking about that a lot?
A lot of common topics is I'm doing this for myself. And balance. And if we get in a conversation, it's like, playing the balance game, the balance game, or they're saying, I'm so selfless. It's finally time for me to do something for myself. I've seen it in both, like the stay-home dad, the stay-home mom, whatever it is. I've seen it from both ends. And you are over there grinding at whether you're in office or not, and then wifey's over there at the hospital. You guys can get off the same time to the same build-up. And where do you release that? Where do you kind of... Wow. So I think that's where you have to have that understanding with that partner. And if you're lacking that, I could see the friction starting to build. You guys are on the same frequency. Mm-hmm. I like to think of it's the most organic or true way to see things. It's like you guys are vibing off the same frequency. That's what I can tell people as far as like in comparison. Because if anything's off, man, like going back to the music thing, sound waves. Yeah. A lot of people understand sound waves now because you could literally just see a microphone, if you guys have like any phone, if you're listening, you could see a sound wave, like, the pulse, right? So pulse, heartbeat, vibration, frequencies. That's, and I'm not even trying to sound all holistic and like, you know what I'm saying?
I like it though. Everything,
but you know what I mean?
It does come back full circle though. If you think about like, the things that come, cause you're right. When you start dating somebody, you want to have the same, like you said, the commonalities and things like that. I expressed this to my wife yesterday. I've been having a tough week, just, work projects and things like that. And with my son, he's been like, just been extra needy this week and stuff. And so it's a thankless job parenting in a lot of ways. When I take a step back and I realize like, I just needed to talk about it. Like yesterday, I told my wife, I was like, I just need to talk about it. Cause I always do that thing where she'll tell me about something and I try to fix it right away. Yeah. And then this is one of those rare occasions I was like, you know what? I just need to talk about this. I was like, I don't
vent. I just need to let this out. Yeah.
There's nothing that you need to fix. I just need to talk this through and stuff. And I was just, and I was talking about that, being parenthood is just a thankless job, whatever too. But like when you get together with somebody with the intention of like, maybe you expected to have kids at some point, maybe you didn't. But when you have the next generation of this little needy person that is fully reliant on you, the partnership that you have with that individual it's a beautiful thing because you need that. You need somebody to balance you out in such a way that maybe it's somebody that carries the financial burden, right? Maybe it's somebody that carries the parental burdens and all these things. And when you're able to balance it out. Just like everything, life is about balance, You can drink too much and be an alcoholic. You can eat too much and be overweight. Everything is about balance, Right. If you don't find the commonality and the common denominator of these things, and the relationships are doomed to fail. Parenthood, you're doomed to scar the kids, Yeah. So yeah, it's deep, man, and I don't put enough emphasis on it. So I appreciate you getting to the point because you didn't blatantly ask me about it, but
no, I didn't. To be honest with you, man, I don't want to say I don't like to face it. I just in the tattoo shop, man, we don't talk about relationships. I mean, the clients might talk about their relationships, whatever. But I guess when we started talking about this family, my household is a harmony, is a frequency. Yeah, that's the best way I can transcribe all that and it's a
chord, a musical chord.
Yes, you know what I'm saying. When everything's in harmony, when everything's in tune, that is my family. So I think that's. I'm very thankful for, man, things wouldn't have played out this way with many decisions you would have taken or not taken. And it's just kind of bizarre I feel like that's a whole nother topic and conversation. But so the story that you're about to say, whatever you've been through to this point, you can now step back and being like, I've said this story millions of times. One thing that I realized, though, is this. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah. I thank you for, number one, asking me the question about what is motivating me today, because I don't think we think about that so much. Yeah. The other thing is that, like, when I take a step back and realize how blessed I am to have my family and at my disposal, because I was at the point of death. So October 5th, 2023, last year, I went to the ER. I thought it was just another thing. To be honest, I thought I was just having a panic attack. I had a heart attack. At 38 years old, it was very unexpected. It was also very severe. It was what they call the widowmaker, which means that there's only a 12% survival rate from this type of heart attack. The main artery that provides 60% of the heart's function was completely blocked for me. So it was shut entirely. So I went in on my own 2 feet, just thinking I was having a panic attack and some chest pain and shortness of breath. My wife dropped me off in the front of the ER, and then I was like, all right, pick me up later. We're going to be fine. It's all good. They took an EKG and sent me back. And by the time I knew it, I was, surrounded by a team of physicians, and they were just, giving me life-saving measures. It just happened suddenly and very, it seemed like the thing you only see on movies where you look up and you see the bright lights of the hospital, and you see you're moving down these halls and you don't know where you're going. Thankfully, I didn't have open heart surgery because I caught it to enough time, and also I didn't have heart disease or anything that led up to it that would indicate that I've had years of heart trauma.
Sure.
All things said and done, I'm going to show you the scar that I have. That little dot, it's probably not going to show up on camera at all.
Oh, wow.
You probably can't even see it.
Yeah. I see like a
little. It looks like a mole or something.
Right. Yep. One of the arteries, like a main.
Yeah, the main artery through that way. And so the procedure is catheterization. So I have a stent in my heart now that basically opened up the pathway to access to my heart again. Man, it was a scary situation.
Yeah.
I went through all the phases of almost, I think, grief. Thinking that I'm in panic mode. I'm scared to the point of just like, all right, this is it. This is my time. I'm accepting death at this point. I just I'm praying to God that, hopefully that my wife and kids are going to be taken care of and they're going to be all right, and thinking like, man, do I have life insurance in order and all this stuff? And I wouldn't wish upon anybody. The weird thing is I actually have never said this part of this, now being this far out, not even a year yet, but still far enough out. I'm almost better having gone through that now. Now I'm very mindful of the things that I'm putting into my body. And so the reality of it was, there wasn't anything particular that I was doing. I'm not a smoker. I've never done any of that. And
is it hereditary?
It's hereditary. So I just got genetic. I've got heart disease on both sides of my family, but that turned into a very drastic, quick turnaround because of the genetics, It amplified the situation that I was in. Nonetheless, it was a time for me to self-examine and think about the things that were truly important in my life, the things that I was doing, the things that I continue to do that I want to get better at. I was not obese. I was not, anything that was like
red flags.
Red flags, And so that was the thing that I need to stop and make better choices, make better decisions in my life. And also, as I'm saying this, I really want to reiterate that I take for granted the relationships that I have, and I don't tell the people that I love how much I love them enough. I don't say enough about how much I truly love them and value them in my lives, and I hope that I bring value to their lives in the same way. My wife was the first one to drop everything, her being a nurse in the hospital that I was at, downtown Fresno community. She was just there. She handled it. She got my mom to watch the kids, and she was just there by my side. By the time I got out of the procedure, she was just there waiting to hold my hand,
It's got to be rough to be working the shift and knowing your partner's there.
She wasn't even working. She just she just was, because she knows the hospital, she was just asking questions, I want to talk. And so
where are you? Things like that. Yeah.
And so
you didn't flatline or nothing, did you?
No.
Okay.
So even during the procedure, all the while I was heavily sedated.
Sure.
But never unconscious.
Okay.
Never unconscious, and never got to a point of, and thankfully, honestly, it was in the matter of maybe minutes. Had I gone in 5 minutes later, had something happened,
right.
Or,
again, things that we've done or not done, those actions.
Yeah. And I don't know the situation, circumstances enough to say that if I wouldn't have done this, it just I listened to my body, and I never do that. I'm always trying to tough it out. Before I went there, I went for a mile walk because I was trying to walk it off. I thought I was having a panic attack. I was just I'm stressing out. It was the worst case scenario.
Wow.
So I'll go back.
Before that, what was your character like before that? Because you weren't really unhealthy per se, but what the outlook on life. It sucks that sometimes we have to get hit with something dramatic drastic measure has to happen for us to change that little bit of thing, or we stress over the little things when we should be thinking about the overall.
Yeah,
so what was your before mindset? How was your standing, your grounds? What was your persona, your character before that? Were you pretty quick to, how should I say, pinpoint what you took for granted and like what
Quick shout out to Helios Tattoo Supplies, one of the newest sponsors for the podcast. I'm proud to be a sponsored pro team member using their needles on the daily. Next time you're thinking about stocking up on supplies, head over to the website heliostattoos.com. Thanks again to Helios for sponsoring myself as an artist and sponsoring the pod. Now back to the show.
There was nothing drastic for me to say like I need to like change my ways in that way. It was a gradual mindset of things, you know. I didn't think of that initially, but what I did think about is the things that I take for granted. I feel like I give my best version of myself to everybody else except for the people that matter most, except for my wife and kids. At work, I give it my full, and I'm like listening to my staff, empowering them and coaching them, and really like pouring into other people. When I come home, I get frustrated with these boys that are so impressionable, these young kids that are impressionable that I can be pouring into in the same way. My wife, like, I think what attracted her to most of me is just like my lighthearted character, you know, my charisma and things like that. And I don't give her enough of that anymore. Yeah. I give so much to others that I take for granted who's most important in my life. As I'm saying this, I'm processing this kind of thing right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. We got to kind of lay it out.
Even just like the material things too, you know, like how blessed I am to like, you know, we own a home. We've done well. We've worked hard to see the fruits of our labor in a lot of ways. And I was just thinking like, you know, like it's all for naught. What was any of this for? Those are the kinds of things that I have to constantly remind myself because, you know, like it's really easy to get back into the habits of life. And especially like now I'm doing very well. You know, I'm down like 40 pounds. I've been able to maintain that. Now I'm at like 193, 195.
Right. That's without Ozempic? No, I'm kidding.
No, without Ozempic. You know? It would have been a lot easier with Ozempic.
Dude, so, you know, what's crazy is that's kind of the stuff that I was talking about when going back to the whole, you know, like it all depends on how we respond, react, this snowball effect of stuff where, again, like I mentioned, I started off and there's a lot of things that we're magnets, you know, we're attracting a lot when we're trying to repel the stuff that keeps on sticking to us. And it's just kind of like, I feel like some days we can walk around with such heavy magnitude and it's very hard for us to, you know, we have to find that, okay, how is this, like this one thing, it can't let it ruin your day. You know, what, like if you want to talk about the whole like realization, it takes a lot for us, for me nowadays to snap in a sense, to like when before I didn't see it or I didn't like a lot of little things would get to me. I'd be no tolerance for this. Which here's an example, you know, you go through something and you just kind of hardened up, right? You get that whole chip in your shoulder. Somebody that grew up where they had to be hard, like hard on the block, you know, walk around like, but something drove you to that. We get driven to the point where we ask ourselves, what was the last straw? And in your case, it'd been like, okay, this, you could have not have reversed it. You could have not have come back from that. It's not like the woe was me kind of story. This is the person I am now. What we take for granted and also how we deal with things, how we deal with stress or how we, you know.
There's good calluses and there's bad calluses. Sometimes we callous ourselves to, like you said, you know, the last straw. Even with sobriety and other things like that, people hit rock bottom. But I wonder what life would be like if we didn't wait till we hit rock bottom to make changes, you know? Yeah. I did go through this drastic situation, but I wonder what my life would have been like if I just was more mindful of that, if I just did these choices like long term, and I still continue that because I've got a long journey ahead of me still. I'm still more prone to like, you know, heart attacks in the future. You know, I'm now on, you know, like 9 medications daily, and, you know, I've got to make constant choices out of these things. The intentionality has to exist now by force. But what if I was already making these choices? What if I decided that I want to change my life before I hit the brick wall of a challenge or a trial? And I wonder if it's the same for everybody out there. Like, you know, if you see a situation where it's leading down to the path of a tough situation, a trial, a real struggle, what happens if we tackle it ahead of time? If we're proactive in our approach instead of reacting to something.
What stresses you out?
Man, everything.
Yeah, because like this kind of led to it. And you're like, man, I've got anxiety. It's getting the best of me.
Yeah.
Did they tell you after, like, check your stress, check your intake of this?
That was the biggest one. So genetics and stress were the things that, I'm a big coffee drinker, so caffeine intake was a big one for me, I didn't have a ton of energy drinks, but I would upon occasion and stuff like that. So like I'm mindful of these kind of things now. The stress factors are absolutely huge. And that correlated with the job that I was working at the time. The things that I let get to me when they shouldn't get to me. Like parenthood.
Things, right?
The little nagging things. Life is too short. Literally it is, like any day could be my last day. And if I don't stop thinking about that, then these kind of things don't matter. It doesn't matter if, like, yesterday when I was making my kids dinner, I got really stressed out because I had made this whole bowl of spaghetti. I turned around and I just fumbled it and it just like dropped on the floor, and I just like started laughing. Just like, oh wow,
that would happen.
Yeah, that would happen. But
yeah,
but before, to be quite honest, I would have been like freaking the hell out, like, just, like,
that's what I mean.
out,
that's an example of like, how we deal with it. Allow ourselves to get there or not. You're working in an office, right? It's all mental work.
Yeah, it's all mental work, which ironically takes a toll. It takes a big toll.
That's what I'm saying, man. I'm sitting down and I'm just concentrating for hours on end every day. And if you can imagine just a regular empty glass of water, you start filling up that water, that's your day. At the very top, man, if you don't know how to control that, it's going to overflow. It's going to spill. It's like putting it behind our back. We don't know how much we're pouring into an empty glass, right? And if we are able to see that and check that and monitor and regulate that, how much water we're pouring into this glass, right? Because it goes back to the whole, are you a half, is it half empty or half full kind of guy or whatever? I see the analogy as this is like your day. You start off empty and little by little things start building up. Like you got emails to check. You start pouring a little bit of water. And it's like you get to your job, you clock in. Here comes the water from this. And it could be ounces at a time, or it could be, a whole half a water bottle. And when it gets the best out of us is when it's just like dumping water, pouring out. We've popped our fuse, And so I think I'm a lot better at regulating that. And I'm again, the analogy is the water is your stress, your day, right? Mm-hmm. And we are that. We're getting built up through the day. And we're concentrating, we're sitting. Do you do coding or anything like that, or? No,
I did. So I've always worked at a pseudo like sales role. So I've worked in technology. It's technical sales. So
there's demand. There's like a lot of people that you're working with. You're the boss, but you have to make that happen. The connections you have to write, like prospect. You have to go make these calls, follow ups. The guy I just worked on. So man, every day's different. There's times when, you'll hear me say, man, this is a stressful day. What do you mean? You're just sitting down and doing art. It looks like you're coloring, listening to music, watching something, or listening to something. It goes beyond that, man. Yeah. Like what's going on inside here is different. In order to relate to someone or be on their quote unquote, like I was saying, their frequency of them, but I've talked some people out of a mindset where it's very self-destructive. And who knows, if they wouldn't have talked to me, if I did not care to respond or give into that conversation and just not talk to them about this, they could have gone left here and like done something bad. I don't even think about that sometimes. It's just like a natural thing where if you genuinely care to talk, you will. Being a people person, you learn to read body language, and you do pick up on vibes. You do pick up on, like, not an intention, but they'll come and sit down and they're just a good energy. And so then you match that energy. Okay. And now imagine someone's like off the wall energy. Now you have to kind of not be off the wall, but you have that in your space, and they leave, and then you get somebody that wants a memorial tattoo. That's not gonna be the same energy. And this memorial is fresh. Like this just happened.
Yeah, you can't be happy-go-lucky and be like, hey.
Hey, you're supposed to, I mean, you want to change the mood. You obviously get it, but sometimes I don't know that exactly. Like you said, it's like, so imagine, man, there's a lot of different switches, man. Yeah. And it's pretty bizarre. So now, again, you're matching that. Your water is filling up in this cup, right? Your stress, your pressure. And I guess a pressure valve is another way to compare it, right? It's the same thing. A pressure you see build up, and it pops. I can't leave here with my cup spilling, like, you're trying to hold a drink and you're like a bumpy road, and you get home and it's like, no, man, you have to know how to allow what you want to have in in your like thoughts, of your the things that you're processing, your work. Okay, I'm gonna leave this work here. I'm gonna leave this in my work computer. Or if you have to take it home, leave it in your office. And if you have to physically, tangibly think about somewhere to put it and lock it away.
Yeah.
A client of mine said that they put their iPads in the gun safe. And it was the funniest thing because the iPad can be like a weapon. It's a tool and it can be used the wrong way. People will take advantage and of whatever, like the source or the connection, somebody reaching in to your child that's using an iPad.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, at this time, we put the iPads in the gun safe. You know, iPad is kind of like a gun, dude. And I was like, you're right.
I like your analogy of the cup a little bit better than the valve, because if you balance your life in such a way that you don't overflow that, the beautiful thing about it is if when you're walking with this cup and you've got a little bit of capacity, when those that you love, they have an overflow of cup, you're like, hey, dump a little bit on me, dump a little bit in more.
Yep.
I've got some room for it.
Right.
Let me take a little
and
bit
that's
more
you being
for
a
that.
listener. That's you being a good partner. That's you being a good, on that same, again, man, that same harmony. And to a friend.
I even hit up like old friends after this happened. And it's just like, hey, man, I know it's been a while. Like, why haven't we hung out in a minute, you know? And
you know, I'm thinking about the way you grew up in this house too. Is like it was hard for you to have silence. I'm guessing.
Literally, like my younger brother used to sleepwalk, and he'd wake up.
That's got to be rough, dude. I don't know if I trust my siblings. So I'm the only child, but I mean, I got my own. Like, you know, my dogs were like my friends at the time when you're growing up in the country, you know, and living in this same kind of situation with like the shack where the field workers would fertilize and spray.
Smelled.
Well, dude, it's like they had the hazmat suits and we don't have anything. And they're just like cutting across the fields and like spraying and like fumigating for like all the pesticides. I'm out there just playing, you know, like waving at them. And it's like, go inside and close the doors. That's not enough, dude. You still got like, so I remember, you know, my grandma would be making food. We'd be watching TV, like the little small, like the laptop screen is bigger than the television I used to watch, you know, with the window open, and they'd be out there just spraying for bugs, pesticides, this hardcore chemical where if that guy driving the tractor looks like he's in a biohazard suit and we're not.
The immune system's probably better.
Dude, COVID can't touch this. I'm kidding. They got me, you know.
The way life has a way of just kind of like grounding you and reminding you. I think, you know, the humble beginnings kind of brings you together even a little bit more, much more, you know?
Yeah, the humble beginnings. Yeah, it's funny because we're over here like, why are you acting out? Oh, wait, we're the cause. We're spoiling you guys, you know, something.
I was thinking about that. I was like, man, I've got the kids have like literally like in our house, they've got like their own living room because it's like the playroom kind of thing. And I got a 60-inch TV just for themselves. And I'm like, man, these kids. Man.
And we're over here on our phone, right? Watching the game or something on the...
The TV I paid for. And
what brought you... You know, before I forget, well, so you had the break from your self-doubts and doubts, and I'm sure you hit those moments and you're like, I need proof of this, of what I'm following, whether it's religion, right, what I'm believing. A lot of people need that validation. Yeah. So what brought you back in?
I attribute it to an anchor or a North Star, something that is always there and always keeping me on sort of a pathway. No matter how I drift, I wander. Though I protest that I question whether or not there's a God, I think for me there's always this weight of stability and consistency. So somebody that's not religious, or everybody has their religion, even if they're not following a deity, whether that's CrossFit or veganism or something that they're very much an advocate for. There's such a value in having an anchor, something that you follow, this North Star. And for me, that came back to my faith, believing in a God that I've seen kind of do things in my life that I no one else will ever maybe even believe, but will experience. I attribute my life to being a blessing. God has me here for a reason. I've got more work to do. I've got something else to do. I've got a purpose.
Right. Did you find purpose with your first child? How old were you?
Oh man, like Yeah, absolutely. So I was 33 when I had my first kid. Like in a Mexican household, that's an old maid.
Late bloomer.
Yeah, late bloomer. My wife and I were married almost 4 years before we had our first kid, and we got really got the chance to do some traveling, went to a few countries and different places. And fatherhood is my greatest joy in life, man. I there's nothing like it. It gives me such a sense of purpose of wanting to do better. It gives me a purpose of wanting to earn more, enrich the lives of these kids, and invest into the legacy that I want to leave for them. And it's crazy, man. Like I'm sure you see it in your kids as well. It's just that, like the little things that like you're like, where did you learn that from? How did you learn that? When they start developing these little personalities and stuff, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing.
I'll tell you what. I don't know if I don't want to put it on. I don't want. How do I put this? I don't call this a success thing because I feel like this isn't it. I'm always striving for that next whatever it is. The next whether it's like, oh, one day I'm expanding the shop, or I'm gonna be doing this more, or all these little, if you want to call it accomplishments, or the oppositions that you conquer, the adversities, the stuff coming out positive and coming out winning on the other end. I put that on my kids, man. Like I say, like, hey, like you guys they're the reason why I became so, again, like it's not a success. It's how I've accomplished things. Like they put that was my motivation, and not with just this. It was just like to be that better version of yourself kind of thing. And I just, without that, man, I'll tell you what, I don't know if I would be as motivated, as, accomplished in certain things. So I'm like, I think I told them one time, because they're asking about the business. And I'm like, you guys are like the reason why, that? And I don't think it resonated yet. Talk about pedal to the metal, man. That was my drive.
Yeah.
Is the kids, man. The kids, and like the family expands, then it's like adds a whole new lane. But you have to drive it on the same road. People see like this profile of you. What's behind it is the stuff that you're.
When I'm at my peak, like pliability, and just like any motivation that I have to do something or to hit the ground running in such a way, it's because of that. Because I literally I can right now vividly picture in my mind my experience even today, walking home and walking into the doors, and the joy that lights up on my boys' faces, and like, hi, Daddy, they're just excited to see me, and that, eventually when they're teens and stuff like that, it'll change and shift and stuff like that. But when my kids were babies, you have this, like, they're just these little blobs that you love so much, and just like, man, I can't wait till you're talking,
Yeah.
And when they start talking, it's like, oh man, like I can't wait till like you start understanding, and we have a dialect together. And when you start doing that, every phase of life, you just can't wait and when they're teens, you're like, man, I can't wait till we share these experiences, and I can instill something in you. And then there's going to be a point in my life where I'm going to be saying, man, I can't wait till you get to enjoy the fruits of fatherhood as well.
Right.
And every phase of life, man, I think that they're my motivation. Somebody once told me that, well, what happens to you and your wife when your kids are out of the door? What happens if this is your purpose and your sense of purpose? You can't live your life for these kids. And we're like, if I know that my boys are successful and independent and doing all these things on their own, then I will have felt like I can do anything in my life now. Now I can do the hobbies. I can do all these things, and maybe I'll be an old man or whatever at the time. But like, just knowing that I did what I could to instill in these things.
Would you call that fulfillment kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's the legacy that I want to leave behind. Is that this next generation of these kids that bear my name, and not in such like a machismo way, like the bloodline red.
Thor on the mountain.
I begot my son.
Inscribe this on stone. Yeah.
My firstborn.
Yeah. There's fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
And there's this. What's legacy to you? Like, what did your father pass down to you, and what are you passing down to them? What's your idea of this legacy?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think there's a ton of qualities that I would love to instill in them. But if I can say at the end of the day, the legacy I want to leave behind is an independent person that makes good choices all by themselves, and not because they're guilty of having something from me, or like this, this image of dad wagging his finger at them.
Yeah.
But
Approval.
And
disappointment.
And all these things.
Yeah.
If they find fulfillment in being an independent and capable person within themselves, and not everybody, because of disabilities and because of other things like that, not everybody has the luxury of doing that. When you have a child that's autistic or special needs, Down syndrome and things, you can't say like, my child one day will be doing these great things and independently doing the things, but you can still see a sense of like gratitude that they express all on their own.
Yeah.
And if I'm able to take a step back and just like, look and enjoy the outcome of my family as a result, that's the legacy I want to leave behind. Is just, I want it to be a trickle down of love continually, a trickle down of hope and grace and empathy and all these combination of these characteristics that I hope to instill, that I try to emulate, that I try to show. Not always good at it, but like if I can see, like if I was a fly on the wall in a room where my son decides to say, no, I'm gonna not make that bad choice, I'm gonna make this good choice, that's, I could die a happy man at that point.
Yeah. What's your parenting, I don't want to say tactic, but how do you give examples to them as far as like the consequences? And I mean, because they're still kind of young, right? They're what, 4 and 5, you said? Or
5 and 2.
Well,
so, yeah.
Oh, yeah, wait, 5 and 2. Okay, so mine are 10 and 11.
Okay.
I take it by 5s.
Okay.
So after 5, now you got up to the 10s, right? Everything between the 10s, you got up to the 15s, which is like that teen, right?
Yeah.
Then you got the 15s of the 20s, and that's, our wick is burning out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, I tell my lady, I'm like, I'm getting close to 40 and I feel it already. And she's like, relax. And she tries to like bring me down. It's like, no, you're good. But I'm like,
40 is a new 30.
I don't, yeah. But the thing is, again, I don't like blindside.
Yeah.
I don't like to get blindsided. I like to be prepared and not in control per se. I like to just be ready for whatever. Again, get a flat tire, take that on. I'm not going to react this way how I used to, and I'm going to react a whole different. I drop my bowl of spaghetti, I break the plate, I'm not going to react like I used to. So it's like,
it's an interesting balance because it's always about like, I sometimes I forget about like the kids that are in the room, seeing the all they have to work off of is the examples that we're setting,
Right.
And I think about my 2-year-old right now. He always copies me because I do the same thing when I drop something, when I do something, I'm like, I do that. And so he's reacting the same way. He was working, he'll pick up his toy, he's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, he got that from me, So I'm mindful of that. Like, I try not to obviously, like, I try not to swear and do other things around them. I also try to, like, give them example of, like, hey, we eat our vegetables, like little things like that,
Yeah.
They're at a small age, but that's very impressionable. I think that the choices we make in front of them, like, the whole trope of, like, back in the 50s or whatever too, when they would, like, literally like smoke in front of the kids, blood in their faces and stuff like that.
In the car, AC going and smoking.
Like the proudest moments I have is when they are able to do stuff on their own that I either taught them indirectly or they just were able to absorb it. They're little sponges right now. Everything we say and do, they're just, they're collecting intel of that.
Right.
So
right.
I just got to be mindful about how I live my life. Honestly, that's the best way.
I'd like to revisit that question someday whenever they're like in the 10s and be like, hey, Ish, how are you doing this now?
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, man, right now they're like my little best friends. You know? But that means that they are a lot more sharp. They're a lot more aware. They're a lot more, resilient to stuff.
Yeah.
And your responses, your reaction. That's why I've checked myself so much to be like, all right, yeah, my world's burning, but how I show off my reaction, how I what's on the outside, that's going to really reflect, or that's being, keeping that composure.
Yeah.
And there's some things in life that we have no control over. You've traveled, so you're on this flight home. You can't wait to get home. Your plane's delayed, or there's a malfunctioning on, where I'm getting at. Okay, you're stuck outside the gate and you go to customer service. When's the next flight back home? Tomorrow morning at 7. Instantly, what are you going to do? Your heart drops, dude. Your temperature rises.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about it. depends where you are. If you want to drive, let's say you're Phoenix to Fresno, you want to do that 9-hour drive or whatever, or Vegas to Fresno, right? By all means, but that's totally on you, right? Or do you want to just, all right, maybe there's a reason why I shouldn't be on this plane.
Yeah.
Let's just let things play out. Because I've seen it all, dude. I'm literally waiting, and I'm like, you could do it on your phone, or you just do a phone call. Okay, just to make sure. Let's give you your hotel voucher or whatever.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And then I take it as I really wanted to be at home tonight at like 8 or 9. Now it completely screwed up the plans, whatever. Now I can't get home till tomorrow morning, 7 or 8 a.m. now. Mm-hmm. They got me a hotel. Cool. I'll go over there. There's a time where let me give you an example how it used to be for me. I slept in the airport upset.
Yeah.
At a bench. Just mad. Just angry. Like there's nothing you could do about it. Yeah. Why are you mad?
Yeah.
So, and then it took a lot for me to get there. Like you said, you had something hit you, and now it took a lot for the healing, the mending, a little bit of foreshadowing. It's like, so a little bit of that mending for you to come back and being like, well, I'm not like this anymore. And it takes that frequency of our family to sometimes, like, our wives or something to tell you, like, bring it down.
Yeah. There's the bad calluses and the good calluses, you know. The good calluses are something like, when you're learning guitar, you have to get your fingers calloused in order to be, Mm-hmm. But what ends up becoming of that is that you're more, the sound becomes more beautiful, even if you're clunky when you're not calloused in the way. And so the way our lives come about, we can either take the hard times in stride, or we can just be miserable as a result, Yeah. When the calluses come, we can use it as the result of the things that we can improve upon or do better. When life throws us a curveball, what are we going to do with that? Right. Sometimes it's just when it's beyond our control, we have to be mindful of like the positive outlook of things and say like, yeah, exactly right. Like maybe there's a reason. Maybe this was the flight that could have been delayed or for some.
Or end up in the desert.
Yeah. It's all relative because it's easier to say it right now because I'm not in the thick of it. I don't know if you've ever had an experience where they ask if anybody's willing to give up their seat. The flight's been overbooked. Yeah. So they did that like the third or fourth time, and they're like, "We got a Visa card incentive or whatever." And so I was just like, "Let me go check on it." So I was like, "Hey, what's the incentive?" And then they started like saying like, "Oh, it's $250." I was like, "Nah, never mind. We already had a hotel booked and everything." So they kept on doing that. They overbooked, and so it got up to $1,000 a person. And so I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm gonna call the hotel. I was like, $1,000 each of us. That's $4,000.
Yeah.
And so we ended up like going up there, and no lie, they gave us Visa gift cards for $4,000. And so all that was is a delayed day. We're thankful we were here in Fresno still. So we're just like, I'm gonna call the hotel. We're gonna reschedule the booking. They're like, cool, we can do it the next day. Works out.
Solid.
We got one less day of our vacation, but like $4,000 in our pocket.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
We use that. Ultimately, we use that to book a flight to Spain. So
nice.
All fully paid for. Because of the result of that. So
that's legit.
But like, yeah, like
I've been the highest bidder. I've been like, come in here at 4,500.
I was telling myself, like, should we wait a little bit more?
It's like a little raise the stakes.
Yeah.
That's funny. Another thing you can call it is being tested, right?
Yeah.
Test your might. Like Mortal Kombat. You know what I'm saying?
Like, you play that as a kid?
Yeah. Test your might. It's your mental toughness, man.
Yeah.
Like going through stuff like that. Some things you just physically cannot change. It's out of your control, out of your power. You just got to roll with the punches. And depending on how you deal with it, depending on how you handle that situation, it builds you. And enough of that. I think that's what put me to that position where you're like, yeah, let's just a little more easygoing on things and not stressing over, like you said, the little things. And let's look at the larger outcome of the situation.
I appreciate people like you that are bringing it to the forefront of our minds, because I don't think we think enough about these kind of things continually. Yeah. And, that's the reason why I started my podcast. I'm sure it's probably the reason why you started podcasts, is that we talking through these kind of things, thinking about these things, being mindful of these things. It's very, very helpful. It's very, very helpful for us to just, to be mindful and to kind of put these things in motion as well. Right. Seeing, inspiring stories, interesting stories in ways that, if there's anything that my podcast has been, there's kind of an evolution of that, but the goal now is that if anybody gets any sort of, if they get any sort of
value,
anything of value from that, then that's what it is,
Right.
It's still for me in a lot of ways. It's my therapeutic outlet. It's just to have conversations with people.
Have you ever done therapy? Like any?
I have. Yeah, I've done like form of therapy, not consistently enough to have it make such an impact in my life. But
like a start and stop kind of thing.
Yeah. The lens that I was looking at is, in the world of business, I'm bombarded with meetings all day. So the formality of a therapy session was just another meeting on my calendar kind of thing. Honestly, the most therapeutic things that I like to do are, talk therapy, which is just like speaking to people on the podcast, friends, music. And my biggest one that I go to the most and the quickest is something manual. So like if I've been at home all day and doing something that physical. I need to like chop wood or do the yard, or like I've been on this kick where I'm like redoing the lighting in my backyard. So I'm so I'm like, I'm stressed out. I'm gonna go work on the lights.
What's your hobby? Is that music?
Yeah, music's one. I like carpentry. I like to build things. I like to
wood cobbler. Like
no, I'm not that good.
I was gonna say, are you out there?
I don't do dovetail joints.
Yeah. Can you make me a bear out of a log, dude? Sculptures back there. Going back to the whole the stress and the starting off your day, however it starts off, whether it's good or bad, don't let that define your day. I guess that's what I was kind of redirecting with today, because again, I went from this tattoo, this neck piece cover up, to a memorial tattoo of this guy's sister that passed, and it's rough, man. They're young people, and it's before he left, I was just like, man, thanks for giving me the honor to do that. It's intense. People don't think about that. The whole memorial tattoos, artists, we think about it, but the other people that see, if you were to have something, what's this for my grandpa? That's cool, but that grandpa was like your dad. Mm-hmm. Well, we don't know that, Right. And it's so I told him, I was like, hey man, this is your sister, dude. I have no siblings. You do. Another person out there can relate. They lost a sibling, and it's we have to. I have to make that happen for them to be do its justice of a memorial. This isn't no tombstone. This isn't no grave. This is something that you're carrying with you. I've done the whole the husband passing away. That's very hard too. Because think about it, and they're young, and it's you have to do that person's. That's a heavy tattoo. Yeah. And before he left, he's
a lot of pressure.
It's pressure. It's you have to live up to a lot of things. You have to really be fine-tuned. Imagine you're sleep deprived. You have this stuff going on in your life. That switch, you got to know how to separate that line. And anything you do, you're sitting at your office, you're dealing with these companies, you're in these meetings. If you're not there, if you're not present, if you're checked out, because a lot of people do that nowadays. And I realize that. I realize when I'm talking to someone, it's they're checking out or they're tuning out. And so then we face it. What is causing that personally to check out, to tune out? Mm-hmm. And then I hone that. So now I can self-evaluate myself before I come in, and I'm like, something's wrong, something's not right. Before I start this tattoo, it's not fair to the client to not know what's going on in my head, because they're not going to know. We can keep, we can keep that in our head, like you per se. The pressure, I don't know when we're talking about this cup, like half filled or half empty or whatever. Mm-hmm. At this hour, we don't know where it's at. You don't know where mine is. You don't know what yours. We can't ever compare. But regardless of that matter, we have to go back to our house and to really know how to regulate that. Make sure that we're not that pressure valve.
Yeah, because then you're dumping it all over on the people you care about.
Yeah. So I have to. All right. I did the memorial tattoo. He told his story. It laid heavy on me, and I'm just like, dude, I feel for this guy. And then I could see his fight of sitting through this tattoo. Even he said it after the end. He was looking at it in the mirror, and he's like, until when I was about to get off work, it dawned on me that I was going to do this. And he's like, because it's morning. It's he's been in that the coping, that stage is right now. It's hasn't hit him yet. It was real, but it was think about it. Now you're going to have a reminder. You're going to have it's not just a tribute or a memory, tribute tattoo. Now it's a reminder to yourself that you lost the person. And so you have, it's literally like they say, I hear the stories about the psychedelic stuff, right? And they say, before you take this trip, your mind has to be right. It's funny to hear them say that, because I'm like, when people get these memorial tattoos, their mind better be right, because I don't want them in here. Not that I don't want them in here. I just don't want them to be like, it's hard, man. They got to keep the composure together and be like, I'm doing this. I've had people that I do these like rest in peace tattoos, and they're laughing with me because they're just like, oh, she was like this and she was like that. Just really reminiscing and really like paying that homage to, she would have laughed. She would have loved this. Oh, if I make a face, she would have just made fun of me. You see that mindset?
Yeah.
Versus the guy that's in here that's like, oh, it's starting to hit me, man. And I'm like, if you need a moment, by all means. But I need to like get it together. And we have to do that. And I don't want to be mean about it, but I tell him, like, imagine if you were to come and you tell me, like, let's go with the heavy. I just literally, like 2 hours ago, I got a message saying a portrait. My daughter died. And I look at the picture and she looks like maybe, I don't know, 13, 14-ish.
Wow.
She looks young, dude. And I was just like, and we're about to do this podcast, bro,
Yeah.
And I have to like answer in the middle of all this. It's like the person that's working the CPS, and they have to be strong-hearted about that, because if they let their emotions get involved and get the best of them, they're going to go to jail because they're going to want to beat up or
no lie,
So now I have to be like, this guy's about to lose it. And we have to, again, like I mentioned earlier, like we get good at reading people's body language or intentions or energies, and we have to now be that filter or the translator of their idea, that your image, translate that onto your skin, your feelings, your emotions, whatever you're going through. I have to now make sure I do my end of the job and, shoot that on the skin. So it's heavy when it's a loved one. But it makes it easy when they're like, oh, they would laugh and they would this. And I'm like, this is awesome.
It's the same thing as, why some people don't, like funerals or look forward to funerals, because it's such a burden to bear, even though they're not going through the grieving process themselves, they're paying respects to that person, but it's hard to be. And, I always say, like, I've even said this more so now. It's like, I want my passing to be a celebration of my life. I want it to be the, obviously when you live a long, full life and you die of an old age, it's easier to celebrate the person's legacy in that way, saying like, hey, they've been around for a century or decades, My grandma actually was, my great grandma passed away when she was 106. So she literally hit the century mark, When that comes around, it's kind of like, okay, like it was their time,
But imagine when it's not.
If she was 6, and that's when it becomes more of it's hard to celebrate.
But what you're leaving behind that you didn't accomplish yet, and there's a lot, man. Like you pulling through something that you might have not have.
Yeah.
If you think of it that way too, it's pretty intense. Let's just say, Ish, let's say you hit let's all hope we hit the 106 mark, right? Let's all hope we hit 106, but life happens. Something like this happens where we got blindsided.
Yeah.
Like you got blindsided, and again, you're like, let's do the self checks. Like, well, I'm not this. I don't do this. I don't put this in my body. Like, what's going on? And then for people to be like, Ish, he didn't fulfill this. He didn't fulfill a dream.
Yeah.
What he's leaving behind, to those that we know that are leaving kids behind or just loved ones behind or whatever the case, man, because I know everybody has their struggles, their demons, and that anchor. I like how you said the anchor reference, because you said, you anchor yourself to something. And a lot of people anchor themselves to days of sobriety. They need that. And I never understood it. I was like, why do people need to like count?
Yeah.
Like, how is that? Because they needed that tangible anchor, which is a date, to be like, I need to count my days.
Anybody in recovery, they know exactly how many days sober they are.
Yeah. What's funny and what's cool is that the centers that use, I know of a center that gives you an option that says like, look, these are like the recovery and the healing and all that, but they're not going to push the ideology of religions, or they just want you to be open-minded to if you are. It's like when you go to prison or do some hard time, you convert to Muslim.
Yeah.
Why is that? Maybe that's the only book that's there. Imagine.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the only resource of outlet or anything to read is like, whether it's like the Quran or whatever. Have it be options. That's more like, it feels nicer to be like, let me just read it all. And for that knowledge of, let me understand everybody's point of view, instead of being so quick to be like, I don't know, I can't deal with this. Because I understand what you meant about the people in the churches, right?
Yeah.
It's not a broad spectrum of the people. It's just the ones that are maybe, they can give off this hypocritical thing.
Yeah.
Right? Where they're attending, but they're now contradicting the reason why they're even attending. Yeah. The biggest thing will be is your faith is in your home, like they say, right? And it doesn't mean your house, it's your home, your temple inside. Like, that's what a lot of people would say. And that's why they're like, hey, thy body's thy temple, don't tat it up, bro. I hear it all the time. I got my first comment the other day of like, that Lord said, like, it doesn't faze me. I'm just, because dude, what am I going to do? I can't reverse unless I buy that, like, I mean, I could laser my body off. I don't want to do that, but I've marked myself up pretty heavily.
Well, yeah. To talk about that point a little bit, I was of the same opinion at one point too. Because the Bible blatantly talks about not to mark your body, but you got to understand the context of the way it's speaking. It's speaking. I think it's in the book of Leviticus. It's speaking to a specific group of people at that particular time where they were going through whatever specific issues that were happening at the time. So they were given this set list of rules, and it just so happened to be written in this way. But also, in addition to that, it also, in the same, like maybe with 2 scriptures later, it also talks about like, don't shave your beard. Don't shave the sides of your beard, because that's a sin. Right. It also says don't eat an animal with red meat, red blood. So if you've ever shaved, if you've ever eaten beef, if you've ever eaten a hamburger, you're just as guilty as the person that's getting a tattoo if you're going to use the literal. If
you want to compare, exactly. Right? And again, so like the whole faith is at home. That could be anything. That could be not just faith. Whatever you believe or don't believe, that I wish that was kept in home, at home. I'm not a preacher. People sometimes will preach, and sometimes and I'm just like, I give them I allow them, it's like I choose to separate myself away from that or not, whatever. But it's nice to have the people around you that are like, I have friends that are atheists, Buddhists, Muslim, and we all intervene. We all, there's Jewish friends of mine, and that's never a source of small talk. What's your political view? Yeah. And what's your religious view?
I hate politics.
Keep that at home, dude. Keep it at home. Your politics are at home and your faith is at home. Keep it there. Yeah. It sucks that nowadays that's like a small talk thing. Yeah. It's like you really have nothing else to talk about. You just want to like
Well, it's the idea of somebody trying to convert you or to get you to believe and that's also like that's sad for the generation that we're in a lot. Maybe it's a social media aspect or whatever too, but like I don't necessarily want to associate myself with just other versions of myself. I don't want to be like the echo chamber, as it's called, like just preaching to the choir kind of thing, right.
Yeah.
I want to know, I want to learn, I want to know about perspectives. I want to know about experiences and stories and shared, where we cross about that, because I had a Muslim friend of mine that like, he was telling me about stories about how he grew up and they were, strict in the way they grew up and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, we did that too. There's like a lot of cross collaborations in that way. And it was a beautiful thing to know that like, hey, he grew up in North Macedonia. So it's like a different country. It's like a bunch of different spots. And I was like, man, that's like really similar to what we did. So it's like a shared experiences from different parts of the world,
in your own home. Again, that inside that, and that's why I see why a lot of people separate themselves from a church, from attending to a church and then revisiting the idea to go back into a church and attend.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, well, they say you can practice religion at home.
Yeah.
Which, in other words, keep your thoughts to yourself, keep your beliefs, your ideas to a certain extent, obviously. But I mean, when it comes to that, like, unless you're in that surrounding where you're like, I know for sure 100% some of my friends are like, he was raised the way I was and he believes what I believe in. That's, okay, I guess. But
Yeah.
I don't use it as small talk. If I just met you we're playing pool or something, I'm like, hey, what's up? Oh, what's up, Ish? How's it going, man? Yeah, like, are you a liberal or
I know if that's
I'm not gonna hit you with that.
If that's the first part of your conversation.
Dude, that's such a like
Yeah.
it's real in some places though, and it sucks. Like, and I hear it all in here, and it's funny because I hang out with the rednecks to the Chicanos to the like the attorneys to the police department it's fun, and you're in the middle of it all. You hear it all. There's it's crazy, man.
Well, I'm really happy to see the direction that you're going with the podcast. I like the concept of the community, because
this is what we do when I'm tattooing, and a lot of that gets lost, and it's just kind of like I want to be able to, to somehow journal that down and just there's times where I'm like, man, somebody needs to hear this. This guy changed his mindset, or this guy's now did it on his own, did this on his own, changed his life, did a turnaround without any program, without any 12-step, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty motivational and inspiring.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna get you on the podcast. I like that's all week. I have this like convos with people, and then I just set it up. It's fun. From everything you've been through, from your health, from your, I don't know, all these experiences of life to this moment, somebody were to come to ask you advice, what would you tell that person? Anything. If they say, hey, what's your take on this? What's your take on outlook on life? Like you said, the mindfulness and stuff. What would you tell that person as far as advice? Anything that from all of Ish's life wrapped around like to this moment, what would you say?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'll go back to the biggest lesson that I've learned so far that I would love to share continually with others is to not take anything for granted, not take anyone for granted, and to take risks in that the risks that you may think that you never thought you can do, you can try. And the trying part is in itself an accomplishment. And take risks to tell people, be vulnerable, to tell people how you feel, to tell your loved ones that you love them, when you love them, to remind yourself to not get stressed over the little things. Don't sweat the petty things and don't pet the sweaty things.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And where can people find you? Where can people find the podcast? Whether it's your personal one.
The Mendsroom, MEND''S, available on the all major platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. Mendsroom.com. We've got a website. We stream the latest 5 episodes on there too. Nice. I'm just I'm constantly having some interesting conversations with interesting folks. I've got a couple of ideas of the doc. I'm wrapping up season 1. Season 2 we're going to come at about a different way too. So
that's awesome, man. I know. Congrats on that full year wraparound. I was like, dang, that's cool. I didn't even know it was a whole year.
I had set out to do. I had intended to do 20 episodes for the first season, and I actually thought it was going to be like 6 months, but with the delay and stuff too, it was going to be it's coming around, and I'm enjoying it, man. When it stops being interesting to me and stops being helpful for me, it would have run its course, but it's still interesting, it's still helpful.
It kind of writes itself sometimes. That's pretty fun.
It does,
because it's like this conversation is different than every other. I'll tell you this much: everything we've talked about is different. If I've referenced like a few things, everything's been different, and it's like a personal thing too. So it's like my liking. I'm not trying to hit this whole if you're gonna tune in, you're tuning in to get a glimpse of what's going down with and I'll talk about tattoos, and I'll have like an intro to all this, but I have people tune in and be like, this is another person, which like you're part of the community now, which
thanks for bringing me
once you get tattooed, that you're like officially jumped in. But the fact that you're like, hey, I got future plans, don't worry, you're part of the community shop, come in, let's talk. Because now you come in next time, bro, and it's like, I know you. The amount of time that we spent just chilling, this is like when I'm tattooing, you get to that deep level with these people and these conversations and these clients, and it's like, I tell people, I know some clients I'm spending hours on end with them, like therapy sessions, but it's like getting tattooed. And now, like, I could tell you, like, the kind of character or person, and it becomes so easy to just, they're coming in and I already know, again, like that day is going to be, this is going to be set. The energy is going to be this right here. And this is going to be, and it's so dope, dude. I appreciate you, Ish, man. Thanks for coming in, man. This is Tattooing Out Loud, guys. We'll catch you on the next one. Appreciate you guys.